When the end of the mowing season finally arrives, I'm extremely grateful because by this point I'm pretty tired of mowing my lawn, but the work isn't over because your job isn't done yet. You still have one more thing you need to do, and it's not that hard to do, but if you don't do it, it could mean a lot of work for you when the next mowing season comes around. That job is to properly get your stuff ready for short storage, or in some cases, it might be even longer. What's up everyone, and thank you for stopping by. Today's projects are some of my equipment that I use or just recently picked up and got running again. Now I didn't bring the variety of tools I should have, but you should get an idea of what you need to do when it comes to your particular machine. Like I said, it's not that hard to do, but you might have to force yourself to do it because it might sound like a lot of extra work. However, the work you put into it now will save you a lot of aggravation later on. Now, I'm going to do some preventative maintenance on these mowers and my trimmer. However, it may not be the exact thing you need to do to yours. We'll explore other options later in the video. Now, we're only going to mention what these other options could be. We don't have enough time to look into them, but if you need more information on these options, you're welcome to ask as many questions as you need to. Now, if you've already seen my other video on putting my leaf blower away for storage, then the steps I'm going to be using on this trimmer should look very familiar. The most important thing we need to do, of course, is to pour the fuel out of the tank. I'm going to be reusing this fuel, so I'm going to pour it back into my fuel can. Then I'm going to completely empty the fuel system by using the purge bulb to move all the fuel back into the tank. Now make sure you tip the trimmer away from the location of the fuel filter in the tank because you don't want the fuel to go back into the lines. I'll then pour whatever came back into the tank into the gas can again. Now there should be some fuel still in the bulb which we need to get rid of as well, and for that just point the bulb up towards the sky and continue pressing it until it's as empty as you can get it. Now is this last part important? Probably not, but it's what I do. Once you've poured out what came back to the tank, don't close the fuel tank up just yet. Instead, leave the fuel cap off and let any last fuel vapors leave the tank. The reason I do this is I intend on storing this trimmer in my storage and I don't want it smelling like gasoline. Now at this point, there should be no fuel in the purge bulb, the carburetor, the fuel lines, and of course the fuel tank. It's now ready to be put away into storage. We'll talk more about a few other options for this trimmer at the end of the video, but right now I want to move on to the mowers, starting with my own personal mower I use on my lawn, which is this old beat up and very abused Honda. Now, I'm not the one who abused it. It was most likely the person I bought it from, but I can't be sure. This thing was ran for years low on oil, and it's not the bottom end of this mower that's making noise, but the top bearing that's making all the noise. To be honest, I'm just waiting for it to break on me, but after 7 years, it's still running strong, just like the day I got it. The first thing I want to do is drain the gasoline out of the tank, which isn't as easy as it was on the trimmer. Now there's not much in there, probably several ounces, so I'm not going to be able to drain it the usual way. Instead, I'm going to remove the fuel line from the shutoff valve and let it drain there. If you don't have a convenient place to pull the fuel line, I'll show you another method here in a little bit. At this point, the fuel is probably about 2 months old and it's already got some color to it. Once it's finished draining, I'm going to reconnect the fuel line back to the shutoff valve and put the wire clamp back on it as well. After that, we need to move to the front of the mower so we can get to the drain bolt on the bottom of the bowl. Now, I've modified this part of the air box years ago, so doing this job would be a lot easier, and of course, filming it would be easier as well. All we need to do is remove the drain bolt and let whatever gasoline is left in the lower part of the fuel line and in the bowl to drain out onto the deck. If you want to try to capture this gasoline with a rag or a pan, well, that's up to you. As you just saw, there was hardly anything in the bowl, and that's because I shut off my mower by only using the shutoff valve, which leaves very little gasoline in the bowl and lowers the chances of having any carb issues after storage. The next mower is going to be my Cub Cadet that I picked up for free several months ago. Now this overseas engine does not have a fuel shutoff valve, but it does have a drain bolt on the carb. Of course, we're going to check to make sure if there's any gasoline in the tank, and to my surprise, I don't see anything there. That means we'll move over to the carb to make sure there's not some there either. Now, most people just call it a day there, but they don't realize that the gasoline that's left in the lower part of the fuel line and inside the carb is the part that's most likely going to ruin the carb and not what's in the tank. Surprisingly, there's also nothing in the carb either. I apparently ran the mower until it was out of gas the last time I used it, which is, of course, another method to making sure there's no gasoline remaining in the tank or in the carb. The last mower we're going to look at is my Toro Super Recycler, which really surprised me with all its near commercial qualities. However, the engine that's on it is a very common option during the time that it was released. Now this one does not have a fuel shutoff valve or a drain bolt, so we're going to have to try a different method. If you look in the fuel tank, we can see there isn't any standing gasoline visible, but it's definitely still wet. On this type of tank, the lower part is not visible, so it means there could be several ounces of gasoline that even my drain hose can't reach. Now, since I don't know how much is in there, the best option would be to just run the machine till it runs out of fuel. After almost 15 minutes of running, it finally ran out of fuel. I should have just mowed some grass with it, but everything has already been mowed already, so I just had to let it stand there. It's now ready to be moved to storage, but it's not going to the shed. Instead, I'm going to take it to the storage. Now, I don't like putting things in my storage if it has gasoline or even oil in it, so I'm going to drain what I can out of it. Since I just ran the engine, the oil is really hot, so it's pouring out like water, which should help to get rid of any sludge at the bottom of the engine. Now, I didn't change the oil on this mower when I worked on it. I think I just added oil to it so I didn't damage it, but it looks like I definitely needed to change it, so it's a good thing I'm draining it out now. After that, I'll replace the dipstick, and it's now ready for storage. Now, since I didn't run the engine on the Honda, the oil is very cold, so it's not going to come out as quickly as it did on the Toro. In fact, the air temp is around 55 degrees, so it's going to take its sweet time coming out of the engine, so I'm not going to make you watch it. Now, this one was a bit messy to drain, so make sure you clean up afterwards. And of course, the last mower we have to drain the oil out of is the Cub Cadet. Now, this one is going to be a lot like the Honda, and it's going to take its time, so I'm not going to show you the whole process. Now, is it necessary to drain the oil before you take them to storage? Absolutely not. It's mostly my choice, and the reason is very simple. If there's an oil leak, I don't want to be liable for damages there. The other way of getting around this would be to put a drip pan under the mower, but I find this to be very tedious, and if there is oil in the pan and I forget the pan is there, I could still make a huge mess. Another option when it comes to storing your mowers is to leave oil in it and then treat your gasoline with a stabilizer. This should take care of it for several months, and you should be able to even start the engine on the treated gasoline as well. This I find to be the most effective way of storing your mowers. I almost forgot, don't forget to clean the mowing deck of any grass clippings or anything else that shouldn't be there. Otherwise, you might have mold growing on the grass in several months, along with the risk of the deck being damaged by rust. Now, even though the Honda doesn't have a metal deck, I still clean it so I don't get mold growing on the deck. Another option for storing the trimmer is to also use a fogging oil in the engine. Now, this should keep corrosion from forming inside the engine, especially if you intend on storing it for a very long time. Now, you may think I'm going a bit overboard when it comes to storing my equipment, but I think it's worth the time as it will keep you from having to do more work later on. You don't have to go to the extent I do, but as long as you run your mower till it's out of gas at the end of the mowing season, you should be okay. I hate to say it though, but when it comes time, most people just seem to forget about it, and when spring comes around, there's a good chance you might have a huge problem on your hands. So my question is, would you go to this extent when putting your equipment up for storage, or have you been lucky all these years and have never had any issues once spring comes around? Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions, and I hope to see you in the next video.